I'm very much of the view that premium live sport is very valuable to established media entities. And when I became chief executive, I was sort of asked the Premflix question. And once again, for the next 3 years, and I think our media rights sales team are led by Paul Molnar, are somewhere in the audience out there, and did a fantastic job of securing another 3, and in some cases 6 years of deals with media entities and media companies. And that is our primary strategy. That's not to say that we're not developing our own optionality.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of SBJ's On Stage. I'm your host, Taylor Bloom. This week, we're taking you to an October 2nd, 2025 conversation from Leaders Week London, where Premier League Chief Executive Richard Masters sat down with Karthi Gnagnasegaram, BBC Sport and Sky Sport presenter and host, for an in-depth conversation about the future of one of the world's most powerful sports organizations. They explore how the league is managing global expansion, adapting to new governance expectations, and evolving its media and commercial strategy to stay ahead in an increasingly competitive landscape. It's a thoughtful look at leadership, growth, and what it takes to future-proof the Premier League for the next decade. Let's go on stage.
We are still very near the season, the start of the season. What is it that you judge, both on and off the pitch at the moment, just in these early stages of the health of the Premier League, Richard?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me. I think at this stage of the season, you're sort of looking at the basics. Are our stadiums full? Has the Premier League viewing public turned up in numbers again? I think it's a sort of tick against those things. We've obviously got something new happening domestically. We've got multi-view on Sky Sports Sunday 2 p.m. People can see different matches in the same time slot the first time. How's that performing? So far, so good. And look, obviously the season settles down when the transfer window ends. And obviously you've seen our clubs yet again investing in the market, bringing new faces to the Premier League, a bigger share of the world's top players. That is all good. And then you look at the table and you say, well, what story is it telling you? And after 6 match rounds, it's telling you it's competitive. Everyone's lost a game apart from Palace. I think probably the standout performance is really Sunderland, who are a promoted club who've won 3 games, drawn 2, and just lost one of their first 6 games. They were the first to tell you that there's 32 matches to go. But I think so far, so good. It looks really good and competitive. Yeah,
there are lots of points in there that we can go through over the next 30 minutes, including the new broadcast cycle, which is a record. What certainties financially does that give to clubs and also to the lower league clubs, not just the Premier League clubs?
Well, we're as you say, at the start of a new commercial cycle. So domestically, we were out for 4 years. The first time we've done that, obviously a regulated process. We have new agreements with Sky, TNT, and the BBC. Internationally, we've seen a lot of growth, up 27%, term on term, and that's fantastic news. That breathes new revenue into the system, allows clubs to plan. And obviously, we've also grown our market share. So the Premier League, when you look at our competitive set, which is the other 4 big European leagues, we're now 50% of the media market, just about, which I think is a fantastic result and performance, and allows our clubs to plan with certainty. And as you said, it also allows us to also help the rest of the game. We are big funders of the grassroots and community football. We'll maybe talk a bit more about that during the chat, and also the EFL as well, who benefit from solidarity payments from the Premier League. So I think it settles the whole system down and allows us to move forward.
Yeah, we'll come back to some of those points. You mentioned the 2 p.m. watching multiple games. Amazon was part of the Premier League deal previously. They've moved to different markets. They do that all the time. But in terms of wanting a streaming platform as part of the weekly cycle, is that something that the Premier League feels that they might be missing out on?
No, I think that we're entirely open and neutral as to what sort of media entities that we end up working with. Our job is to put a compelling proposition in front of media companies, and to seek as much interest as possible, whether they are streaming entities or not. I think is by the by to us ultimately. And of course, we do work with companies that have streaming entities within them. Now TV in this country, Peacock abroad. So I think we're very neutral to that. As I said, our job in this country, in a regulated environment, we changed our packaging, went to 5 big packages. Amazon had 20 matches in a small pack that wasn't available. So we asked the market a different set of questions, and as I said, we're very pleased with the result.
The global market, on this stage, actually, a few years ago, I was talking to MLS, and they were just about to announce their deal with Apple. Is there the potential now, IMG's deal for the global market is finishing, this is their last season, for you to take, I mean, you are taking this in-house, but how much potential is there now, and how close are you to having your own service, an OTT service?
Well, I'm very much of the view that premium live sport is very valuable to established media entities. And when I became chief executive, I was sort of asked the Premflix question. And once again, for the next 3 years, and I think our media rights sales team are led by Paul Molnar, are somewhere in the audience out there, and they're doing a fantastic job of securing another 3, and in some cases 6 years, of deals with media entities and media companies. And that is our primary strategy. That's not to say that we're not developing our own optionality. So you mentioned Premier League Studios. So you're right, we've been with IMG, done a fantastic job for us down at Stockley Park for 20 years. Premier League Studios is opening up at Olympia next summer. So we're putting ourselves in the supply chain, the content supply chain, principally to serve our international broadcast partners, and so that we have a stronger control over content, addressing new audiences. But it also gives us the optionality going forward. We also have relaunched our digital platforms this summer with the objective of getting closer to fans, building a bigger relationship with the hundreds of millions of fans, Premier League fans that exist around the world. So it is, we're stepping towards that optionality, but I don't think there'll ever be, and this moment is not on the horizon where there'll be a switch on, switch off moment for the Premier League. It'll be a mixed economy over time, and who knows when that moment will come.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think a YouGov poll this year, 42% of Premier League fans in the UK said they would subscribe to an OTT service for the Premier League. So it's something that I think some fans are starting to think about in this country, let alone globally. You did have a shareholders meeting, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. I think it's quite interesting, we've got Roger Goodell coming up here from the NFL shortly, to know what it's like having to talk to self-interested parties, 20 self-interested parties, potentially, billionaires, what it's like inside that room. Can you take us inside that room, and how do you end up getting to a consensus?
We had a meeting last Tuesday, yes. So I'll just pull back the curtain slightly. It might be a slightly disappointing version, because I think perhaps there's a perception there's a lot of tension and rancor in the room. It isn't like that at all, really. I mean, we do have our moments, but by and large, it's very well-intentioned, professional, high-quality debates about key issues. And obviously, we need to align the clubs on a common strategy. That much is clear. We had 2 votes last week. They all both went, when broadcasting matters, both went through unanimously, and we discussed the financial system, which is coming up for a vote in the next few months. But back to the self-interest point. I mean, the Premier League is set up to be competitive, highly competitive. That's what I think its unique selling point is. And so the byproduct of competitiveness is self-interest. Don't be surprised if people are thinking about the 1 or 2% difference that a certain decision will make on their chances of competing in the Premier League, whatever their objectives within the Premier League are. So you don't rail against it, you just work with it. And I think one of the strengths of the Premier League, by comparison with our European competitors, has our ability to remain a collective, even under pressure, and to agree a sort of unified way forward. We've always been able to do that in the end.
Roger Goodell, as I mentioned, coming up here shortly. How much do you speak to others? I think you know Roger quite well. How much do you speak to other brands, the big leagues potentially? You've just come back from the Ryder Cup. What are the things that you look for when you go?
That was good.
So, yeah, I bet. What are the things that you're looking for at those kinds of events that you might want to bring to the Premier League?
Well, I think it's incumbent on anyone who's involved in international sport to remain connected to other sports and not to get too myopic and think that you've got it taped. We certainly don't think that at the Premier League. I mean, naturally, we have a lot of interaction with other big European leagues in our sport. We see them as fellow travellers. We're naturally connected to American sports through our ownership as well. So you're right, we do have, I wouldn't call them regular, but last year and the year before, we had sit-downs with Roger and his executive team where we're swapping notes, I think is the best way of putting it. And then the sports that are big in this country as well, rugby, cricket, golf, you have to keep an eye on what's going on. I think that cricket's done probably the best job of all sports of integrating technology into officiating, and I think football's some way behind. I know they're different sports and they run at different rhythms, but there's always something to be learned from observing global trends, what's going on. There's a lot of disruption in sport. Football's no different. So you've got to keep an eye on things and remain open.
And there is a lot happening on the global market in terms of sort of trying to stay open. The international calendar is expanding. We know what's happening with the World Cup next year, the Euros already. The Club World Cup that we've just seen, I think you had to say no, you declined Manchester City and Chelsea, who wanted to start their season a little later. There's got to be an official break for players. How challenging is it at the moment for you to work out where the fixture list is going to go?
Well, yeah, the sort of general picture, if you sort of wind back 10 years, obviously the Premier League, the domestic football calendar has remained completely flat. We've been 380 games between August and May since 1994, when we came down from 22 to 20. Around us, there's been a huge amount of expansion. So the Euros has grown. The Club World Cup is obviously 48 teams from next season. The new Club World Cup concept arriving in the calendar last summer. And then you've got the UCC reforms as well, the UEFA reforms starting last season. We're now in the second season of that. There is no more space in the calendar. And obviously, there's a sort of player welfare issue amongst that, but it's essentially a struggle for the raw materials of football, which are the players and the calendar space. And our job at the Premier League is to protect domestic football, protect the Premier League space. It's primarily a weekend competition. And we want all of our owners and managers to wake up in the morning with one priority, which is to win the Premier League or to be successful in the Premier League, and not to think, well, actually, I've got too many conflicting priorities now. I'm going to rest somebody at the weekend. That hasn't happened. I do believe that priority is still there, and I want that to continue. So I have another role, which I chair of the World Leagues Association. Obviously, we have our differences with FIFA, the lack of consultation there is with domestic football generally. We think that needs to change. We think that leagues, domestic football needs a seat at the table as these changes are made. And domestic football has had to adjust itself at the altar of these changes. So we now start a week later than we historically did. We've lost a weekend. The FA Cup has had to remove replays in order to rebalance that. The mid-season player break has gone. And it's not through choice. That's the butterfly impact of other people in different rooms making decisions about the future of football and locking out people like locking out leagues from that conversation. And that's not UEFA, by the way. So UEFA do consult through the European leagues and directly with the Premier League. And you can feel the impact of our voice on the final outcomes of that. We may not agree with all of it, but at least you can see that, and that doesn't happen with FIFA at all.
You mentioned protecting various entities there, but not players. I think player welfare must be of concern, given all of the background of what we've just spoken about.
Yes, I think if you run the numbers through, 10 years ago to today, if you were to reach the final of every single competition that you're in, because a lot of our players are playing in their national teams. The majority of the players play for their national teams. There are many more games to play now, and the intensity of the game has gone up as well. So we have to protect the players. We have to do a better job of balancing the calendar, and it shouldn't be at the expense of domestic football.
The first question that's come in from the audience, which I'm guessing, given what you've just said, I might know the answer to, but is there any consideration to the Premier League expanding back to 22 clubs or more?
No.
Okay. There is an independent regulator in football now. How much interaction, or I suppose where are we with that at the moment, if you can explain a little bit of that to the audience, and how much interaction are you having with something that I know initially you were not too happy with?
Yeah, so the football governance bill is now in law. The shadow regulatory team are in operation. We have lots of interaction with them. We're getting to know them. Some consultations are out on the regulator's ownership test and other areas, and so we're interacting with that, as are the EFL and the National League. Our clubs are getting to meet these people as well, because they're going to be part of a licensing system. Not until towards the end of the year will all of the full powers be be given to the regulators, lots of work to be done in that space. So, our principal concern has always been that external regulation might stifle inward investment into English football generally, not just the Premier League. And the rules and regulations that come forward don't chime with even the government's sort of position on regulation, which has been unnecessary regulation or overbearing regulation can stifle growth. So in a couple of years' time, I suspect somebody will be saying, well, I told you so. And I hope it's not me, because the government has promised, really, that they don't want to impact on the growth of English football, particularly the Premier League. And let's hope we can make the regulatory regime that's coming forward effective in that regard.
And the regulator is there to make sure that the sustainability of the pyramid remains. Another question that's just come in, given the revenue gap between the Premier League and the Championship, does the current system create an even wider and unsustainable gap between those leagues?
Well, so this comes back to the distribution of revenue between the various parts. Over the last 3 years, the Premier League has redistributed £1.6 billion, approximately £1.6 billion to the rest of the game. A lot of that is in parachute payments and solidarity payments to the EFL, and also to the grassroots of the game via the Football Foundation, the Premier League Stadium Fund, to the incredible community efforts that clubs across the country, not just Premier League clubs, EFL clubs do via the Premier League Charitable Fund, and many other organisations as well. So there's a huge social impact to English football, as you mentioned at the start, or somebody did, the cultural phenomenon. It's a big thing, and it has a massive impact in local communities. I think the issue of debate is it's not necessarily the funding to the grassroots, it's about the wider league system. The background to all of that is that parachutes have been in place since 1992, and they're not just between the Premier League and the Championship, they run down the ladder of professional football as well. And since 2007 only have we made solidarity payments, and we've done increasingly more generous deals with the EFL during that period. The last one was done in 2019, that still exists. It will roll on forever unless we decide to do something different or somebody terminates it on 3 years' notice, and that's very unlikely. And we survived COVID working together. No club went out of business during the COVID period, despite us collectively losing £3 billion. I think that's an incredible achievement. It shows the solidity and durability of the English football pyramid. That's not to say there aren't problems, and there will always be problems. Between ourselves and the EFL, we've made 2 concerted efforts to try and come to a new arrangement, and we haven't been able to do so. That probably indicates there's quite a significant difference of opinion about what a proportionate, appropriate solution to the issues are. But obviously we remain open to all of that, always have done. We want a partnership with the EFL that doesn't cover just distributions, it covers alignment on financial regulation, it deals with any calendar issues, and also working together on commercial and media matters. We now represent the FA in international markets. There's no reason why we can't work more broadly with the EFL in partnership.
You mentioned financial regulatory matters. Manchester City, the question that's been hanging over the Premier League for several seasons now, 115 breaches. How frustrating has it been for you to just not even be able to comment on something that is a big talking point for the Premier League, across the Premier League, and could potentially be a big pitfall for the Premier League?
115 charges.
What did I just say?
Yes.
115. Yes.
Breaches.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So I think the bottom line is that we're the regulator in this instance, and the rules and the confidentiality protocols are very clear. We have to publish when allegations are made, when charges are put down. We can't say anything at all until a decision is handed down, and we're still in that middle period. And the decision will be handed down, it will be made public at some point, and until that happens, I can't and shouldn't comment.
You can't say that, but again, another interesting question that's coming from the audience. Do you believe that PSR rules are still appropriate, and do you think the number of breaches will decrease going forward?
I don't know whether the number of breaches will increase. I hope not. I think the PSR system, at the moment, people are probably aware, we are talking to our clubs about an alternative system. That's not to say we don't think the PSR system works. It's about closer alignment with European regulation.
SCL,
at the moment we have,
presumably.
which is squad cost ratio, which is a revenue test. The PSR is a look-back profitability test and has its own strengths and weaknesses. No system will be perfect. So we're currently talking about that, about whether we want to change financial system, align more with Europe, because we now have 9 clubs participating in European competitions, 6 in the Champions League. I think if you probably said that 10 years ago, no one would have believed you that was possible, but it is. So we have to keep these things balanced and continue the conversation with our clubs. And that's an important decision, so we should take the time to get it right, but that decision is coming up.
Those SCR rules, I think, are more strict, aren't they? They're 70%. Are you looking at potentially going closer to that?
Ours, so in UEFA it's 70%, and that's come down over a period of years.
Yeah, the UEFA SCR, yeah.
It's now set at 70%. Our system will be at 85%, because we always want our clubs to have the ability to invest. So when you compare the Premier League system at 85%, if it happens, and you look at the other big European leagues, we have a more permissive system. Too permissive, some might say. And it's all a matter of choice. The Premier League, I think, has been built on the back of investment, inward investment, international capital flows coming in, and we don't want that to be stymied off. We do need to work within parameters that everyone is behind and that protect the game.
And the financial power of the Premier League we have just seen with the transfer window, 3 billion, the gross amount for players, which is more than, I think, Italy, Spain, France, Germany put together. There are concerns from elsewhere about competitive balance and just making sure that the Premier League is in line with others. How concerned are you that there's a bit of a suffocating of the market from this side?
I wouldn't say it suffocating it, the opposite, in fact. I mean, the real number, I suppose, to concentrate on is the net number, which is 1.2 billion.
Which is still a record, isn't it?
It is a record, and I think at the beginning of every commercial term, when new growth comes in, you quite often see a sort of burst of activity. 7 of our clubs were net recipients. There's been lots of inter-Premier League transfers, but a lot of that money does percolate out to the big European leagues, a substantial proportion of that, and breathes life into their own transfer markets. So I don't see how it's suffocating. I think there is a clear juxtaposition between the amounts of money being spent by the Premier League and the other leagues, but I think that's a good thing. Provided it's within the rules, it's a good thing. And it shapes our competition. And it's an indication that our clubs want to aspire and get better. And it's an indication that our league is going to be very competitive. And that's what, when you're looking at the virtuous circle, that drives interest. And it's the interest and audience which drives our media values. And so there is always, in the middle of all this, a careful balance to be struck. And we think we've generally got it right over this period of time. And as we make decisions in the future, we'll be mindful of all of that.
Well, the 6 most expensive squads, I think, in the world are all Premier League, so that's a case in point. Another question from the audience. The league has expanded its sponsorship portfolio across the summer with new brands from tech and consumer industries. Are there any industries or markets that the Premier League would not touch?
Well, I think we do talk a lot about our media revenues, and we've had a lot of commercial success. We have a curated commercial program. Agreed with the clubs when we moved away from title sponsorship to have 7 partners and a few licenses, and we've largely stuck to that model. And you said we have new deals with Microsoft and Adobe. They're actually technology partnerships, have helped us relaunch our digital products and are working really well. I think there are probably some categories. Haven't really given it much thought recently of late, but betting and gaming is something where we haven't strayed into that. We're the competition organizer. And I think if there were to be an integrity issue within the Premier League, it's much better for us to be one step removed from that particular sector. And so we've always taken the decision that wouldn't be appropriate at this moment in time. But that's not permanent, that's just where we are today.
We're coming towards the end of the session, so if you have any more questions, then do let me know. The summer series has been something that 10 clubs from the Premier League have now experienced. What is it about that you've experienced that you enjoy, and why is it such a big part of what you're doing at the moment?
So we are, we've been touring since 2003, principally in Asia, in Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, Singapore. In 23, we did our first summer series in the US. The US is our biggest international media market. We have a fantastic relationship with NBC. We've done a brilliant job of growing the Premier League from, I think, sort of a niche interest into something that feels more mainstream now. And Saturday mornings in America and Sunday mornings in America on NBC are fantastic. So it's always reaffirming. It's one of the most enjoyable things. I've been doing the tour since 2007. I've been on every single one. And when you go out there, you get a sense of the scale of interest there is in engagement in the Premier League and with the clubs. And it's fantastic. And so we've taken 10 clubs to 5 different cities over 2 summers, and it's been incredibly rewarding. And I think everybody, whether you're a commercial partner, whether NBC, an international broadcaster, or a club, will have enjoyed and benefited from that experience. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to take the Premier League on tour. Clubs obviously have a lot of their own plans in this regard, but I think it's an important part of our marketing mix, if you like, that we are continuing to do this.
Having worked and lived abroad, I think watching those matches in the afternoon is something that you enjoy around the rest of the world. Again, I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but is the 3 p.m. blackout nearing its end, has been asked by somebody in the audience.
Well, our current domestic broadcast arrangements means that we have now, essentially licensed to the outer limit. There are no more games outside of 3 p.m. that aren't being broadcast. But we're committed to it, certainly for the foreseeable future. It's not just a decision that we make. It's done in conjunction with other football bodies, the EFL and the FA, and we're committed to it for the foreseeable future.
I think most people would be quite happy about that. Just finally, the global markets that we've touched on, you have offices now, I think, in Singapore and New York. What are the reasons behind that, and where's the plan to go next? We actually have 4 offices, and next week we're sort of cutting the ribbon in Mumbai. So the Singapore office is principally, but not exclusively, about piracy. So we have a team of anti-piracy team out there. So Premier League has a substantial commitment to our international broadcasters that we will protect your rights, the rights that you have purchased, so you can get the best possible return on your investment. So there's a big group of people fighting piracy across the region. New York, I think Akash Jain, our US MD, is out there somewhere. His is more of a promotional role. So his job is to work with our partners and to create more interest in the Premier League in the US and to find different ways of doing that. That's the same in India and China, where we've very recently opened offices. And those 3 markets all have something in common, which they're huge economies where football isn't number 1. So you're really trying to grow the sport as much as the Premier League's part of it. And they're long-term investments. So we will see. I think we're now stopping and looking and see how those international investments work. And we'll think about what else we might do in the future. Okay, thank you. I think we're already over time. I have plenty more that I would like to ask you about. We've dotted around a lot of different areas there, but I appreciate you talking us through those and taking time out of what I know is a busy day to come and chat here at Leaders. Thank you very much, Richard Wilson.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of On Stage by Sports Business Journal. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with colleagues or anyone interested in the business of global sport. Here's a closing thought starter. As global sports organizations expand their reach, how can they balance growth with governance and authenticity? I'd love to hear your take. Send me your thoughts at tbloom@sportsbusinessjournal.com. We'll be back next week with another exclusive conversation from a leader shaping the future of sports business. Until next time, stay tuned and stay ahead. This is On Stage.